Tell me you love it, Mr. Kirioth. Tell me you love it, boy.
Absolutely love it.
Well, before we start, let's just say what this actually is. So this is just our... If anybody listened to the gaming news, where we kind of went into like massive discussions on news topics, well, this is like the natural evolution of that, where we're going to go into detail on specific topics that have hit the... Well, I guess the well, it's not really... news topics, is it? It's like gaming topics that are relevant at the time, I suppose. I don't know. Am I even making sense?
Yeah, I'd say it's relevant topics, some of which will be taken from the gaming news
and just expanded upon.
Yeah, and expanded on, and other stuff that people send to us. So if there's a topic that needs discussing that you've thought of but we haven't, send it along to us and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, because I think what the future format will be, I mean, our official description on YouTube is as follows. Game Show is the ultimate gaming talk show with question and answer sessions from viewers, gameplay discussions on the latest and greatest releases, in-depth discussions on the hottest topics for PC gamers. Game Show is the best destination for dedicated PC gaming talk and analysis on all aspects of the industry. So, you know, we're going to cover main topics, but we'd also like user submissions for us to go over. And who knows, we might actually get, well, I think we will, we'll get users into this and actually have them part of this show. That'll be amazing. Good lord. But anyway, for this week's game show, we're going to discuss Star Wars The Old Republic, which was the last major release of 2011, and I guess it only really makes sense that it's the first thing we discuss is in 2012, son.
Well, we have been spending quite a bit of time on this, and really, it's, if you don't know, which you should do, Star Wars The Old Republic is the new Star Wars MMO. Very traditional MMO, but you've got all your traditional elements. You've got quests, NPCs, cities, massive factions, but of course you've got lightsabers, which is principally the reason why I picked it up. To be perfectly honest with you, I wanted to be crazy with a lightsaber, as did apparently 860,000 other people, if the stats that BioWare released are anything to go by. And we've been...
Which are hardly a shock, I think most of the population are Sith. Really? I guess so. I mean, part of the reason, I mean, we picked it up because obviously, you know, we want to discuss it. We're a gaming channel, that's what we do. And I'll be blatantly honest with you, I was not really... Old Republic, I mean, if you look back at previous, the old gaming news that we used to do and other moments we've been discussing Old Republic, I've not exactly been a massive fan, or you know, it's never really pulled me in, even from when I played the beta. Yeah, I moaned a lot about the graphics, I moaned a lot about... it's very similar to WoW and all that kind of stuff, but, you know, you have to give these things a chance, and you can't really base your views of a game on the beta. That's not entirely fair. Although sometimes it can be kind of easy to fall into the mindset of betas are just publicity stunts. The game is literally finished, and this is really what it's going to launch at. You know, this is the state it's going to launch, and it can't really change all that much. So we decided to pick up Old Republic, and it's EA's first major MMO. It probably as well be the last major subscription-based MMO that we're going to really see for a long, well, probably ever. Because it seems to be that the free-to-play model seems to be taking over quite big, and it's been made by BioWare, which, of course, made the Old Republic, well, Knights of the Old Republic, which is what Old Republic is. You know, that's what it's based on, essentially. So yeah, it's about time we go into detail, son, on the specific picks of interest. Good lord. The main thing which struck me initially as we started to play the game was your level... Well, I guess this doesn't really apply for Sith Inquisitors because you're a slave to begin with, but you feel quite powerful from level 1. And it's quite clever how they've done that, because if you we'll use WoW as an example quite a lot during this, because it's just a natural thing to compare it to, you know, because the mechanics are so similar and whatnot. In WoW, you're killing rats, you're killing boars, and you feel like you're killing rats and boars at level 1. You feel like you're nothing, you know. I mean, I suppose you could argue you only really feel like you've got any kind of worth or power in Warcraft when you're actually max level and you're raiding. But in Old Republic, come level 1, or you know, the early levels 1 to 10, you do feel like you are quite powerful indeed. And I think a lot of this goes back to the storytelling, the fact it's a story-driven MMO.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because I think one of the important things is the fact that even at low level, you, apart from the Sith Inquisitor, obviously, you're not being told that you're just some guy. It's like you are the one. You're the chosen one. If you're an Inquisitor, you have been foreseen in visions.
And you know what? You get attached to your character as well.
Yeah, you find yourself sort of. I don't know whether you found this, but when the guy that you start off with as a Sith Inquisitor, when you turn up as a slave, when he starts calling you worm and filth and scum and being like incredibly biased and unfair towards you, I genuinely found myself occasionally thinking, you know what, you can shut the hell up. I'm sick of you. You're sick of me. Get out of my sight. I was actually starting, not taking it personally, but sort of on behalf of your character, you think, he doesn't really deserve this, because, you know, he's doing everything you're asking, and every time you go back, you come up with a new inventive way of calling him a scumbag, basically. And you start to sort of get an attachment that I don't think I've actually had with other MMO characters before.
No, I mean, it's quite clever. It really is quite clever, because okay, let's compare it to Warcraft again. You create an orc in Warcraft, you start off wherever the hell the orcs start off. You know, you're just running around mindless, being a bit of an idiot. You go and see, what's his face? It's not Thrall anymore. It's what's he called?
Garrosh now, isn't it?
Garrosh, that's it. He was in charge of the Horde. So you go and see him, and blah blah blah. It's not really that good. But in Old Republic, it's like, you know, the Sith Inquisitor. You started off, you're a slave. You know the story. You get put. There's an enemy straight away. Some guy's going to kill you. You know, you've got your master who's a bit of an idiot, and he doesn't want you to win. He wants his chosen one to win. You know, and you've got to prove them wrong and defeat them. And it's like, it's a great little story arc, and it's the same for every other class. I mean, I've played the Trooper. It puts you into a war zone, and it's very like I don't know whether this is actually a word, but militaristic. Militaristic. It's very like army orientated. You feel as if you're part of an army, of a military organisation. Like, it's like, yes sir, yes sir, I complete the mission, sir, and all this stuff. Obviously, you can choose to be an asshole or choose to be like, you know, the good soldier or whatever. And again, this applies to the other classes, like the bounty hunter. You start off on Hutter, so you know you're doing bounty hunter jobs for the Hutt. I think it's Nemro the Hutt, ain't it, on Hutter? Yeah. And it's like every class I've played has had such a detailed beginning through levels 1 to 10. I've only played the Inquisitor past that point too. I think we're almost level 20, ain't we, with the Inquisitors?
Yeah.
But like you become invested in your character. You know the storyline, and it really is quite good. I've not really seen. Well, the only other example of that type of becoming so invested in a character, I suppose you could argue, is well, I had the feeling in Dragon Age 1, Mass Effect as well. And what have all these games got in common? Yeah, you see what I mean?
Yeah, it really does have that sort of feel to it. The way it gives you a character that you create, but at the same time, it's like you created the character, but the story's already there, and you just sort of slot into it. It doesn't matter how you make your character look, or you know how you play it. It's very neat in that you always feel like the character that you're playing is the one that should be involved in this story. Which is, I know that sounds odd, but there are plenty of role-playing games where it's too generic. You know, you could create an archer or a mage, and yet they would still say you are the best wizard. You know, there's quite a lot of examples of bad storylines that have people just slammed into them, and this is what's happened, and this is your part in it. In Star Wars, so far, I've found that my Sith Inquisitor is just... that is his story. I know it applies to you because you're also playing Inquisitor, but it doesn't feel like it does. It feels like it's my character story, which is... it's a very clever thing to do when there are so many people playing the same thing. And I think that's one of the things that I like the most out of the storytelling. It's just the fact that everything that happens makes you think a little bit more Oh well,
well, you could actually as well. You could actually take that to the next level, and I mean, you could replay the Sith Inquisitor storyline again, but you could be, not an absolute dark side madman like we are. You could be choosing different responses, and you get different responses back off the NPCs. It's not the same, although it's essentially the same story. It's like a different twist on the story. So when you do say that, a lot of people, we're all doing the same story. We are to a point. But, I mean, there's little subtle changes here and there which kind of make it a little bit different. But obviously, I do agree, it's still the same storyline, going through. But it is quite good how every class appears to have quite a good storyline. That makes you feel, going back to what this whole point is about, it makes you feel part of the game and it makes you feel powerful. Not just some nobody, you really feel part of the world. And I think that's probably the major success, I would say, of Old Republic.
It's done something quite unique with early levels, hasn't it? You're not just some random idiot. You are the focus. It's not just, and then he turned up and, like every other warrior before him, killed 8 rats and 2 boars and was given a crappy piece of armour. Instead, it's you arrive on whichever planet you arrive on, depending on the class, and immediately you are there, and people are saying, "Oh, you're that guy we've heard about." There's a feeling of actually that I might be getting treated like crap in the case of the case of the Inquisitor, but actually people seem to think I'm powerful. And then as you go through the story, you sort of you feel like you're a much higher level than you actually are. I mean, by the time you leave,
that's a good point. You do, yeah.
You've done stuff that, I mean, I can't think of any other MMO where I've retrieved like an ancient artifact that no one else has ever done and been called like the chosen one and told you have an incredible amount of power. I mean, I can't think of any other MMO where that happens. You just sort of, it doesn't feel like a grind because you are the strongest person in the story all the way through.
It's quite it's quite refreshing because like every area you go to, it's not like, again, comparing to Warcraft, if you start off in let's say the Barrens, well, you're in the Barrens, you're doing quest lines there, then you move to Thousand Needles, and then you move to you go to Tanaris, don't you, from there? I'm scratching the back of my memory here. It's kind of at those points you're kind of doing less meaningless tasks as you kind of go up, although they're still kind of meaningless. It doesn't really feel all that empowering sort of thing. But in Old Republic, you're in one area, you're completing a storyline in that area, and it's really good. And then you move to the next area, and it doesn't feel like it's any less of an area than the previous one. At least it doesn't to us at the moment. I mean, bearing in mind we're only level 20, so it's not like we've gone straight to max level and we can give a complete overview of that. But it does feel like at every point, every area, every quest chain does feel quite, well, I guess the word's just empowering. You do feel like you're really making a difference, and this is great. It's like you forget about your level. You don't realise you're level 10 or level 15. Level means nothing. It's like, well, that's great. And this will be a point we'll come on to a bit further on into this discussion.
I think out of anything I've played, it's done the best job at making you feel like you are somebody, not just nobody. You are. It doesn't matter what character you play. The fact that you've got all these different decisions, even though it's the same storyline, and even though the decisions actually are kind of not minor, but they're small in comparison to what you're actually taking part in, it still makes you feel like your character is the focus. And I think that's got to be the best thing about it, surely, because it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. You're playing through a story in an MMO, which is it's a weird mix, which we will come on to later, but it works in that you don't feel like it's a grind fest. I mean, there are any number of quests in there, like the bonus quests. And we did that instance the other day, and it was kill 30, whatever it was, 30 rebels or whatever.
Yeah.
That's actually, as kill quests go, 30 is quite a lot. There's no other way to say it. It's quite a lot of kills to get. But it doesn't, you don't feel as though it's
yeah, but
grind.
Again, the way it offers up the kill quest is it's like you actually choose to do that quest by killing the, it's like a quest. if you've got sent out to retrieve power cores to restore like a shield generator, guarding the power cores will be rebels. You'll kill the rebels, and as soon as you kill one, it'll say bonus quest: kill 30 rebels. Well, you're going to do that anyway, so it's quite good how they've done that. You know, it kind of disguises the crap quest, which is needed to boost you up in level, because they ain't got, you know, you could say there's not enough content to keep you going through it in that area to get you to the required level to lead to the next one, so they needed to boost it somehow, and they've done that through, you know, the bonus quest.
It definitely does have a feel of this is an option as well. I mean, I don't think it is, because I think if you didn't do it, you'd start to lag behind. But it's the difference between walking up to someone and then saying, "Oh, you're a stranger here. Go and kill 30 of these because I can't be arsed," and actually going out, killing someone, and then thinking, "I could probably take another 20 of this lot. Let's do it." You know, it makes it feel more as though you're doing it for the sake of doing it, as opposed to needing to do it because someone told you to, which is, it's only a small thing, but it's quite clever, because I don't think we've skipped one yet, have we? Every single bonus quest we've come across, we've just said, you know what, we only need 8 more, let's do it, because it's not a massive strain, but you sort of do it because you want to, as opposed to because you've been told to, which is an important difference in MMO, and it makes the difference between a grind and just enjoying yourself, I think.
The other interesting point as well is the pets, the companion thing, which is, at first I was put off by this a little bit, because I'm like, what the hell is this? I've got a, you know, let's use the Inquisitors as the example. You've got the Kenval you get to begin with, which is, it's a tank, and it's quite a good tank, and I know we've been in situations where we've completed Heroic 4 or Group 4 quests, but I think 4 is the limit in a group for Old Republic, and we've literally just took our companions as group members, and that's like, it's good in one sense, because, okay, the companion is not as good as, say, an actual player, you know, it's nowhere near as good, and it kind of, you can sort of set your own difficulty level, you know, because I remember saying to you, let's go and do this quest, and you were like, well, hang on a minute, it's 4, Heroic 4, and we were like, well, yeah, but let's just give it a shot. So we decided to give it a shot. Yeah, it was hard, but we still did it. But going back to the whole thing with the companions, this is what I'm just going to say it, I don't really like the whole idea of pets and all that. Because to me, it stinks of having a system in the game which allows you to play the game without having people. You know, you can say, we don't need a healer, I'll just bring my healing companion. And that's like, failing MMOs do that. You know, where they have like, what would you call them? Like a mercenary system. I think EverQuest 2's got it. I think EverQuest's got it. And other MMOs, and it's like, there ain't enough actual players, so let's use an NPC. Now, Old Republic obviously has enough players now. Whether it'll have enough players in the end, you know, or come a year, we don't know. It'd be kind of impossible to tell. But the whole thing with the pet, an irritating thing with the pets, and I know this pisses Kiri off, is everybody's got a Kenval. If you're an Inquisitor, every Inquisitor's got a Kenval. And it looks, you know, because without trying to spoil the game or spilling any spoilers with the Inquisitor storyline, you have to get Kenval. You know, this is like part of your level 1 to 10 quest. As soon as you get Kenval, you know, you've been through this great storyline, you've rescued Kenval, or you've freed him.
And then beat him.
Yeah, and then you see Kenval, and then you see another Kenval, and then you see another Kenval, and it's like, it really breaks the immersion, that does. It's like, oh my god, there's like 5 Kenvals standing next to me. There should only really be one in the story, and it's like, okay, now, this is a bit unfair of me. How the hell would they possibly make it unique to everybody? It could have a random name, but it's still going to be Kenval. It's still going to be the big lad.
Yeah, I think possibly if you could personalise the companions, if you could change their names, that might help a bit. Because I mean, it's sort of it's almost as though every class has got the same hunter and pet system from Warcraft. It's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And whilst in Warcraft there is that thing of some pets are better for tanking, some are better for DPS, and obviously everyone goes for the ones that are better at DPS. It means everyone's got the same pet. Now they may have a different skin on the pet, but they've got a different name. And that's only a small thing, but it does make it a little more personal.
I know, but with Warcraft, that's not really a fair example, because it's like, these are animals in the wild. You know, if you go and get a spider, well, there's more than one spider, but Kenval is like unique. There's only one Kenval. Bounty Hunter, there's only one Mako. You know, it's like you can't. There can't be hundreds of them. It's
that's the thing. There's only one of them. Yeah. There's only one of you. So, but when you go into like the Imperial fleet and you see like another Sith assassin, then I'm just like, okay, fair enough. Because like you know, the universe is Sith, and there are Sith everywhere. There's loads of Sith. Surely there's going to be more than just one Sith who has a double-ended lightsaber. I can accept that. But then when I see like 4 Sith Inquisitors run past with Chem Vals, and 3 of the Chem Vals look the same as mine, it's like, well, hang on, how do you justify that multiplayer part of the single-player story that I got this from? It makes it a bit tricky. I mean, the way around that is to just dismiss the companion in the spaceports, but it's not a very good solution to a problem that I think should have been considered a little more. It breaks it up. It makes it no longer yours.
And also on that topic as well, of it no longer being your kind of story. I mean, in larger cities or in areas where that are not instance. Now, don't get me wrong, the game shouldn't be instance as much as it is, because that does annoy me, because it is an MMO after all, but you feel as if you're like always doing your own thing, sort of thing. But if you're in like, let's say you're in Coruscant or Drorman Cass, and you're going to an NPC to advance a quest, and there's like 5 other people running towards the NPC or talking to him, that is like, again, breaks it, because it's so story driven. You want it to be personal, but at the same time you want it to be multiplayer, and I think it doesn't quite do that very well, because it's like, you know, if you're doing quest X and you got to speak to NPC Z and you're there talking to him, and everybody else is talking to him about the same quest, it's like, well, hang on, the quest he's giving me is, oh, the Senate is about to be assassinated, you must go in and prevent the Senator's death. Well, everybody else is talking to him, and it's like, oh, But I guess they're just like intrinsic problems with MMOs. You can't really get around them. You know, how do you create a feeling of populated area, but also give it a personal touch? You can't create a story for everybody. It'd be impossible.
Yeah, but I think that they've addressed quite a few things with the storytelling, which is really good. But it's also created its own problem, hasn't it? They've got rid of the grindy feel. They've made you feel powerful and connected to your character. But then, along with that, is the problem of you go to do your class quest and you go to hand it in, or you speak to someone about something and discover that there's like 18 other people doing exactly the same thing, which breaks up something that's been done quite well. It's like they've not found a way to mesh the two together. The MMO and the story essentially are still sort of two separate things that they've not quite managed to get together.
That kind of leads us onto the next point, which is the group flashpoints and operations. Now, we haven't really done any operations bar, well, I think you put into an operation for PvP, but that's not really an operation. Operation's basically a raid. Flashpoint is like a dungeon, you know, like a normal instance from an MMO. In flashpoints, if you're in a full group, everybody takes part in that story, and it's like a story for everybody in the group. And I think that's where they get it right, you know, because I mean, I can honestly say, and I think Kirioth's going to agree with this, the first time we did the Black Talon, which is the first dungeon or flashpoint you can do as Empire, it doesn't even feel like a dungeon. It's its own like self-contained story that everybody can take part in, and that is brilliant. That I know we were saying earlier that probably the storytelling just in itself is the best thing it's done. The way that the instances are designed, they're dead good. They're really good.
To be honest, when we did Black Talon and we were doing it, if you hadn't have reminded me that it was an instance, I wouldn't have known, because there's none of that. You're being sent in here to just do this arbitrary task. You know, you don't just go in to kill the boss, which is what most other MMOs do. You go in and immediately this has happened. You need to sort it. You're the only person who can do this because you're the only one who's strong enough. You need to go and do this. Oh, this has happened as well. Go and do that as well. And all the way through, it could, for all I know, it could have been about 4 hours long. I lost track of time because it was just... You have to do these things because you are the only person who can.
Yeah,
and you're being told
or
that
you're
as
the
well.
only. Well, it's you're the only group that can do this, which is good. It's like, you know, you're here on this ship. Oh no, we need to intercept this other enemy ship and capture a VIP. And it's like, there's problems on your ship that you have to sort out. Then you have to go and attack their ship. Then you have to defend a boarding party. Then you have to board their ship. And it's like, this is an instance. This is not just it's not like your average start at the entrance, run to the end, kill the boss. It's like, this is a story. Now, it does change as well, which was interesting to me, on your actual decisions in the chat. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on Black Talon now, so if you do want to avoid spoilers for this little instance, then, well, turn your ears off. But you get to a point where you talk to the captain. Now, the captain's been given an order by a Grand Moth, which is a stupid rank, by the way, Moth. And he has been told to intercept this Galactic Republic frigate, but he doesn't want to do it because he knows his ship's not good enough to do it. So you've been told by the Grand Moff to go and say, look, son, you need to intercept that ship. Now, obviously, because you're the Empire and you're Sith and you're crazy, you can execute the captain and take control of this ship yourself. Or you can force the captain to attack the ship, right? Now, we've done both options. The first option where we just electrocuted the captain because we thought it would be funny. So he drops dead on the floor, and his first officer, she takes charge of the ship. The Republic ship starts firing escape pods towards your ship, and she says, ignore them. They're just a decoy. Continue the attack. And then all of a sudden, engineering's being attacked, because it turns out the drop pods are actually assault droids, and they like bore into the side of the ship and deliver assault droids which go to attack engineering to disable the ship. But if you let the captain live, so you don't kill him, if you say, okay, Mr. Captain, you can live, because he's the captain and he's more experienced, as soon as the escape pods get launched, he orders the ship to destroy them. Because he says that's a Republic boarding party, destroy the escape pods. So then you don't have to deal with getting rid of the droids out of the engineering. You have to actually deal with a proper dropship landing into your shuttle base, which is totally different. And that has made one instance almost two storylines. You could do it twice. And that's quite good, that is.
Yeah, that again, it comes down to the choices, doesn't it? It's the same. It's a similar story with different choices, but each choice is like when you go to click one, you're like, well, what will this do? What happens if I click this? Do I click the other thing? I don't know. I need to know what goes on. The fact that you can go into an instance and effectively do two different things is brilliant. I can't think of anything else that does it.
The downside to this is, why now would I want to go through and do Black Talon? I've done it. Both story arcs. Why would I want to do it again? You know, it's like, okay, it's great for once, but then ultimately they will become gear grinds. I know we said they don't feel like it the first time you do it, because they don't. I mean, Black Talon, that's not... Well, actually, I think you can do all the flashpoints in heroic mode. They've got like difficulty settings. I think I'm not entirely sure what they're called. I think they're like nightmare mode and whatever. You know, so they're harder and got better loot. Again, it's so they can like recycle the content to level 50 characters. But at that point, you know, they do become a grind. You'll get the thing with people just space barring through the chat because they don't care. I've seen it loads of times before. I don't want to see it again, which is where it falls down. Because I think this again goes back to the way it's been designed as like a story-driven MMO. It's a story-driven cooperative RPG game, and you end up in a situation of like, doing the Black Talon is fantastic the first time you do it because it's part of your story. You know, you need to get to this planet, and you've got two ways of doing it. You can either get a shuttle from the Imperial fleet, which is just going to take you straight to the planet, or you can go on this fast transport, which is the Black Talon, but that's also an instance, so it's like a good way of getting there. But once you've done that, why would you come back and do it again if not for the loot? And it's like, they've got to balance that. They've got to make you want to come back, but also not make it retarded. And I don't think they can really do that. And again, that's a problem with it being so story driven.
There could be a way of doing it where they basically allow you to remove the story element. There was what was it called in Warcraft, where you met up with the little dwarf girl who turned out to be a dragon. It was Strathome, wasn't not Strathome. I can't remember what it was called, but
I know what you mean. Yeah,
it had a story at the beginning, didn't it, where you had to muck about with crates and not poison stuff, and then listen to Arthur shouting his mouth off about killing everyone in the town. And eventually, people just got so sick of it that Blizzard stepped in and said, "Okay, well, if you all agree, then you can just skip the story." Now that worked for that, but the story is so intrinsically linked to the instances in Star Wars. You probably could do it. There'd probably be a way that you could avoid. I
think there actually is an option in the UI settings where you can skip the things, but still, as you say, it's so involved in the what the instance is about. It's a bit meh. I mean, we did the what was Hammer Station? We did that. Now, Hammer Station is a weapon which fires asteroids. It's a Galactic Republic super weapon which was decommissioned after the last war. And it fires asteroids at planets. Now, that didn't seem to have much story to it, that instance. And maybe that is kind of how it's going to develop as we continue into the game. Because, I mean, the only story element to that was, I think one of the bosses actually spoke to you a little bit. And it was like a one-choice kind of response. There wasn't really any story to it as such, was there? All the story was kind of taken care of before you actually went into the instance.
With that one, that you're right, because that one didn't have the choice element either. Really, at the end, there were two choices. You could either do light side or dark side. And because the winner of the little conversation role thing chose dark side. Obviously, we both went dark side.
Yeah, I think everybody did.
But there was one guy. I think it was the Imperial agent who chose the light side option. And that sort of surprised me because I thought, does that mean he's now got dark side points for something that he didn't pick? Because that's a bit strange as well. That in an instance you would have options that would affect other people, and those people would effectively be punished for not winning the role. Because if you're aiming to build a light side Imperial agent sniper, let's say, just as an example, if you then do 2 instances with us, and in both of those instances there's a dark side choice, there's already a 2-to-1 chance you're going to get a dark side choice, because both of us will do that, because what else are you supposed to do? Does that mean they would then effectively get 100 dark side points in their storyline that they didn't want? I mean, is that something that could be cut out of the Flashpoint? Is that something that should be in them in the first place? Does that make it any less of a decent story that the person who picks one thing doesn't get to see the end of the story that they wanted? I don't know. I think that's another problem with it. It's like...
in fact, another problem with the light and dark system in itself is some rewards are actually dependent on how much light or dark side you've got. Now, there were actually... I think there were saber crystals that you could craft that were quite good. For me, let's say, but because I've got so much dark side and not enough light side, I couldn't actually use the crystal. And it's like things like that where you're going to get a benefit from being either light or dark side, and you don't know what the benefit's going to be until, you know, the game's been played for a couple of months and everybody knows everything and all the details out. You know, you can easily Google the information and say, okay, the best Inquisitor is going to be somebody with this much light and this much dark because he can get this and that, you know, that type of thing. Then can be a little bit frustrating, because often the case is in MMOs, people like to min-max, so, you know, you like to have the best character possible for what you're going to do. I mean, if you were an assassin, a Sith assassin who was down the stealth tree, so it's kind of like a rogue in Warcraft, you'd want the best gear and the best, you know, possible min-maxing of your character. And if that's going to be kippered by some clown selecting light or dark side, or it's going to delay you in getting that, then that's a problem. And also with the light and dark side choices, it probably has an impact on the loot in the instance as well. You know, because the Black Talon had different loot if you went light side and let the captain live to the dark side options, and I'm guessing Hammer Station does as well, which is probably why that guy in question was pressing light, because he knows it's going to drop something for him. And that's like, that kind of takes the whole story element out of the light and dark side. You're just doing it for loot, which is like a bit shit, you know?
Yeah, it's that's one of the... I think that is going to be an issue all the way through, because if they put choices like that in, which I think they will, because looking at it, Black Talon, there was a light and dark side choice. Hammer Station, there was a light and dark side choice. It could be that every instance has one of those choices at the end or at the beginning that affects the rest of it. If you group with the wrong people, your idea of what you want your character to be could be completely skewed. I mean, I don't like the fact that I've got 50 light side points.
But it's not. Yeah, it pisses you off more than anything, because it's like I don't want light side points. I just want maximum dark, and I've got some light side here. What's this about? You know, little piddly things like that. It might not ultimately affect your character all that much, but still, it does. You know, it does piss you off a bit with it being so personal and so story driven. I think as well, the other thing they've done quite well, and I've actually been quite enjoying this, is the PvP. Now, it is kind of similar to Warcraft, the PvP. You get the Alderaan Civil War, which is it's not Alterac Valley. What's the one called where you capture the
the farm.
Yeah, what's that called?
I can't remember. It's been ages since I played. It begins with A, doesn't it?
I don't know, but whatever. It's so the Alderaan Civil War is you've got two drop ships, right? So you've got an Empire and you've got a Republic, and you've got planetary defense cannons on the floor, right? Now you need to capture the points, yeah. So you're capturing the flag or holding the point, and as soon as you hold the point, you capture the point. You've got enough people there. You've captured the point. The gun then aims at the enemy ship and starts firing at it. And the whole objective of the... I was going to call it a battleground. I guess it is a battleground. Is to destroy the enemy ship. So you could say that's the same as doing the Warcraft equivalent. But instead of just collecting points from holding, like you control the farm, the mine or whatever. So you're collecting the points and then you win. The actual points collection is the deduction of points from their total. But their total is the health of a ship. So it's like you're doing something. And it is quite good. You see these massive guns firing at the ship and you get, prompts from the Empire captain who's like, we're taking too much damage. The Republic ship is about to be destroyed. Things like that. And that's quite good. I really like that. It's different. And it's like, hey, this is quite good. You're actually achieving a mission objective. You're not just there to capture points and then we've captured the points the longest, so we've won, or we're here to kill 1,000 of your guys and then we've won, or we're here to capture your flag and then we've won.
The thing I like about it is every time you look up in the sky and you see your ship being pummeled by lasers, you think, oh Christ. it looks bad. Yeah. It looks really bad, and you think to yourself, when you see their ship getting smashed, it spurs you on to keep the guns working for your side, because it's a lot of damage and it looks quite impressive when you see how much fire the ships are taking.
They seem to be able to take quite a lot.
Yeah. When you see like 4 of the guns pointing at your ship and bits of it are on fire and the captain's going, do you want to do something about this? We're getting totally smashed. You think, oh God, I need to sort this out. It drives you forward, because it's not just doing it for the sake of it. It's doing it because if you don't do it, that massive thing flying above your head will fall to the ground and you will have completely failed. And it's on you. It's your ship. You got there on that ship, and you're just done when it dies. You've got nothing.
It's the same as the other. I keep wanting to call it a battleground. What are they even called? I don't know. The other PvP map. I think there's 3 available at the moment. One's like a ship attack and defense thing. I've not actually played that, so I can't really comment on it. But the other one is football. Now this is like a game of football through a mental assault course. I mean, it's got this is kind of unique as well, especially to things like World of Warcraft and such, where there are like traps. There were like fire traps which would go off and absolutely kill you if you were standing in a fire trap. There were like pits of acid you could go in and die. And the whole point of this PvP game was you had to capture the ball from the middle of the map and then run it over the enemy team's goal. And obviously they've got to stop you from doing that. And you could throw the ball to each other and score that way. So it was kind of like that game didn't really depend as much on your ability to play the character or the items you've got to a point. it depended on how good you were as a team. You know, like, because if you were set up to score fast goals, which I have seen that happen, like teams will take the lead really quick and then dominate quite a lot because you've got a couple of people who are really working together, passing the ball and you know, scoring points, because that's what wins the game. While everybody else is more concerned with killing each other. You know, it's like that was interesting. That was.
I think stuff like that kind of appeals to me because it's almost encouraging people to not just go for all-out killing, which is a lot of what PvP is. Undeniably, you go to PvP because you want to smash someone's face in it, basically. But actually having a mode where the reliance is not on your ability to run in and stab someone in the back of the head, but actually talk to your team or have a plan, or even, I mean, that kind of game, immediately I think of pre-mades for that. I mean, if you go in with a solid strategy with people who know what they're doing and where they're going, it doesn't matter how often you die, you just win. And it's down to how well you communicate. And actually, it's maximising the contact with other players. Because it's such a single story-driven game, having things like that where the emphasis is not on you've got to kill everyone because someone says so, but you've got to work with these other people. It's almost like it's a good reminder that there are others in the game for you to interact with, and if you interact with them well, you'll do better than the people who are just there to attack people for the sake of it.
But it's not all good, is it, this PvP? Because the main glaring problem is there are no level brackets. So as soon as you can go into PvP, which I believe is at level 10, right, you could go into a PvP game and you're with level 50s. Now, it's not as extreme as it sounds. It's not like, oh god, you're just going to die, because it buffs your stats up to that of a level 50. But there's one glaring problem. You don't have your abilities. And in fact, you know, you have hardly any abilities. A level 50 of your same class will have all your abilities, and if you're only level 10 or 15, you're going to die because you don't have all your stuns, you don't have all your attacks, you don't have all this, all that. And that is quite a big problem. And again, this stinks of a game which is almost consigning itself to defeat. You know, saying, look, there ain't going to be enough people in the 40 to 50 bracket, so what we're going to do is just let everybody play with everybody.
Yeah. The other thing is gear as well. I'm fairly sure that our level 19 lightsaber, or whatever it is not going to be quite of the same standard as the one wielded by the level 50 juggernaut that's just pictured across the map. It's like...
Yeah, I mean, you might be buffed to a point, but you're never going to be exactly buffed, because, you know, gear's going to make a difference. But that is kind of bad, because it means that you're in PvP, and you while you're enjoying the PvP, you're always, you know that you're not level 50, so you're not as effective as you could be, and that pisses me off, because I like things like PvP to be skill based. Now I know it's always going to be gear dependent, but with it just being skill based, you know, that's how it should be. But it's not, because that level 50 has got all its abilities. It's got slightly better gear, well, quite a lot better gear than what you've got, but because it's got all of its abilities, that's the main difference, and that is cheap, and I don't like that.
It's sort of a similar solution to what they did to what was done with Warhammer Online, because I seem to remember with that, when we were playing that, you were in a bracket, but low-level characters, because PvP was the mainstay of that game, you were bumped up to the top of that bracket. So if you're in the 0 to 10, then if you went into PvP, you were bumped up to level 10. And it was the same problem back then, but not quite as extreme, because someone at level 10 has still got more gear and more abilities than someone at level 1, even if you've been boosted up. And it was the same through all of the brackets. I mean, we played that until quite a high level.
Yeah.
And it was the same all the way through. You know, it was like, okay, I am boosted up to level 39, and I'm only level 31, which is okay, but the gear's not as good, and I don't have the abilities. I mean, it's even worse in Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
The gap between 0 and 50 is, in PvP terms, is astronomical. There's no point at which you could go in at our level.
Well, this is a good example. This is at level 14, you get a movement buff, which is your first mount. Instead of getting a mount, you just get the ability to sprint when you're not in combat. And I believe that when you're not in combat in PvP, that actually works. And even if that doesn't work, I have seen Inquisitors, which I believe at about level 16 or 17, you get a sprint ability, which makes you run faster, only for a couple of seconds, but it means you can get to points faster. Now, we were playing as Inquisitors, we didn't have this ability, you know, because we went in as at level like 12 or 13. Yet other characters who were only a couple of levels above us can now move massively fast. And that's... I mean, that would still be a problem within its own level bracket of, say, 10 to 20, but still, it's quite... It's stupid. It's almost like PvP in Old Republic is only any good at level 50. It's pointless playing until you're level 50. Now, I don't know whether their plan is for PvP to be some kind of... I mean, I know Ilum is supposed to be a big PvP area. I've never been there, so I can't comment on it. Like open world PvP. Could be quite good. But it's like, is PvP what they're leaning on here for the end game content? For the thing which is going to keep you coming back again and again? I don't know.
At the moment, I'm kind of hope not.
Well, we can't really comment on it as such, but lower level PvP is kind of pointless. It's okay for the spectacle, but you're never going to be competitive because you're going to get killed by that level 50 with all the abilities.
Over and over again.
Over and over again. Yeah, and it just really is like that. You will die over and over again, and it's a bit stupid. But one thing I think my opinion has changed on quite a bit is the environment design and kind of the graphics to a point. Now, with the beta coverage, played a bounty hunter through Hutter, which was terrible. Terrible damage. I mean, the whole design of Hutter is just some brown wasteland, and it looked dire. It looked terrible, and you know that didn't really give me high hopes for the rest of the game. Then me and Kiri played through Korriban for the Sith Inquisitor start. Now, Korriban, it looked fairly impressive, but it had a feeling that it was really enclosed. One vivid memory I've got from Korriban is the Star Destroyers in the sky. They were clearly JPEGs. They looked terrible, and it's like, oh dear. There's like a picture of a JPEG there in the sky. That is, that's quite bad. And it really felt quite small, Korriban did to me. And playing through both those areas made me quite negative that when the game launches, the graphics engine is going to be subpar, which I believe it is, and the environment design is going to be quite bad. But I do have to say, the environment design is not, it's actually quite, it's pretty bloody good. I mean, if you look at Coruscant, that looks quite good. If you look at, what's the Empire place called?
Drum and Cass.
Yeah, if you look at that, that looks quite good, you know, and quite good. If you're British, means it's pretty good, which again means quite good. So we're in some kind of conundrum of quite good, pretty good. It means it's good. You know, I was impressed. I was visually impressed with the way they looked, the way they were designed. Same for things like the Imperial fleet. Now, okay, it's a bit cheap that the Republic fleet is an exact replica of the Imperial fleet in design and layout, and they're kind of the main cities, but they kind of look like they're not cities, but they're the main hub. You know, it's where all the trading goes on, it's where all the trade skill vendors are, it's where all the skill vendors are, and all that stuff. They're not the main cities for each faction, but it's going to be the main place where you hang out. It's where you can go on missions as well. I think there was a mission hangar where you could go and do like your hammer stations and whatever, and you can fly in between the fleets and go and do the raids and all that stuff, like, you know. So it's where people are going to meet up. They've both got exactly the same structural design. They might not look the same graphically, but they both look like Undercity from Warcraft.
I'm glad you said that, because I was...
It's like a replica, innit? Complete replica, yeah.
Whenever we go in, I'm sort of sat there and I'm thinking, this really reminds me of something, and I can't remember what it is. But the general structure, every time we go in there, I just think, where do I know this from? But you've actually just... Yeah, it is, it's Undercity. But on the other hand, it's not... It's actually quite a sensible design in some ways. I don't think... This is going to sound a bit odd, but I don't think Undercity is a good design. because of the way you get about.
Yeah.
There's all weird archways, and there's no easy way to anyway. You always end up going slightly out of your way to get to wherever you want to go. There's not really that going on in the Imperial.
No, but still, because it's so similar, I don't like that. I really, really don't like that because it's just copy and paste. The Imperial Citadel on Dromund Cass, which is, you know, where the Emperor is, it's like the headquarters of the Sith Empire. The internal structure of that is, I think it's identical to the structure of the Republic fleet station's interior. I mean, the textures are different, but the structure's the same. And I've noticed that a few times where places have been just copies, like cantinas are copies of cantinas, and it's like, that is a bit cheap. And also, another little thing which irritates me is the fact that both factions are mirrored. You know, where it's like, we've got an Imperial fleet, they've got a Republic fleet, and it's the same thing, you know, it's by the main planet. No, actually, well, it's by Korriban, ain't it, the Imperial fleet? And then, you know, theirs is by Coruscant, and it's like, I know there comes a point where you can't make everything totally different, but when you're looking at what is effectively one of, if not the most expensive PC game ever made, or game ever made for that matter, you'd expect little things like that to be in place. And talking about little things to be in place, there is no AA option. However, though, hilariously, this is being patched into the game, but currently there's no AA option. Now, AA is anti-aliasing, it makes jagged edges go, you know, disappear. You need a slightly more powerful computer, you know, graphics card to be able to turn AA on. But the difference, I have actually been forcing AA through my control panel, through the drivers for my graphics card, through the Catalyst control panel. You can force it on. It makes the game look so much better. Now, the graphics engine is not exactly top end. You know, for something that came out at the end of 2011, I still believe it doesn't look... The designs on the armour and the detail on textures is not very good at all. It's quite bad. Now, obviously, the reason for this is because it's an MMO. You know, it needs to run on low-end systems, but it still kind of pisses me off a bit that there were no options for, like, AA. Now, I know they're patching this in, so this is kind of a bit of a dumb argument at the moment, but still, it was not there, and it's like, why the hell is this not here? You know, this should be here, because I've got a better computer than Joe Bloggs down the street. I want AA on. I don't have to go and force it, or go and hack my ini file just to get AA. You know, that's a pain up the ass, that is.
It's something that should be standard on every new game anyway. I mean, it has been for years. I don't understand why you'd...
But they're bringing it in, so it's kind of like a dumb point for us to go over. But, I mean, it kind of ties in with the graphics engine. I don't like the graphics engine. I don't think it looks very good. The only thing it does good is lightsabers and blaster effects. They look quite good. But when we were playing it, because, I mean, we've played it for, I mean, probably close to like 20 hours now. It's got that thing of growing on you where you kind of think, these graphics are not too bad, actually, because you're becoming so invested in the game. Now, this happened to me with World of Warcraft. I was like, yeah, World of Warcraft's graphics are quite good, actually. They're not really, are they? Let's get down to it. They're not really. Technically, they're not very good. I mean, the environment design is quite good in Warcraft, but the actual, you know, the graphics engine itself is not very good.
The playable characters, especially the older ones. Even like trolls and orcs, they look bloody awful.
Well, in StarCraft, everyone looks like they're made of plastic. Not StarCraft, what the hell am I on about? Star Wars, everybody's made of plastic. Well, they look plastic, all the models do, and it looks a bit like some of the face designs look crap, you know, and it's like, oh.
And the tiny, weak body. Oh,
that's another thing. What the hell is the point of the bodies? What, you get like a very small, thin... Well, let's talk about the male characters, yeah? So you get... When you make your character, you can either be a very super small, like 4 foot tall, thin, somebody who looks like the bulimic, right? Or you can be somebody who is probably supposed to be normal size, but is about 5 foot and with a weedy body, right? It doesn't look normal at all. The next option is a 7 foot wall of muscle, right? It's like, where has this come from? It looks retarded. And then the next option is a fat bloke. What the hell? Yeah. What the hell? I don't get why they didn't just allow sliders, you know, for height and girth. I mean, what? Why?
It's like they tried to get all the options down, but like didn't really do the right research. Like they went to weird places to try and work out how big people were. I mean, this is the thing that got me the most. My Sith Inquisitor is actually the race, the Sith. He is, as you stated, a 7-foot wall of muscle. He looks like an absolute psychopath. So when he turns up on Korriban and gets told by the weedy bulimic guy, who's 4 foot, that he is a slave, and the weedy bulimic guy who was 4 foot is better than my character, my immediate thought is, on the other hand, my character could clearly snap you across his knee and not even notice. That's not.
The problem is though, you end up playing the same thing. Like, I will only really play that 7-foot tall wall of muscle. I don't particularly want to be a 7-foot tall wall of muscle, but I do not want to be a little weedy bulimic guy, a medium weedy bulimic guy, or a fat guy. I definitely don't want to be a fat guy. The fat guy is terrible. It's like, who the hell could be the fat guy? And the funny thing is, the fat guy's actually like got a 6-pack and everything. It's like, how's that possible? He's fat. He's literally, the guy's like 30 stone. You know, he's going to run out of breath if he tries to do anything. I just really, it's just crazy. It's like, what the hell? But like, let's recap this point of the environments and the graphics engine. I think the environments. I mean, I've seen some high-level environments off videos off YouTube, and they do look quite good. But again, it's easy to make things look better on YouTube if you're watching them in small little bloody windows and not full screen, actually playing the game. Alderaan, that looks quite good. Hoth looks quite good. You know, Ilum looks quite good. Hutter is totally shit. Nar Shaddaa looks quite nice as well. It looks like a Blade Runner inspired kind of futuristic metropolis type place. It looks quite nice, that does. Coruscant looks, you know, like Coruscant should, like it's a city planet for God's sake, you know, and all that stuff. So I think there are good and bad points. I mean, some of the environments look nice, some look quite bad, and I think the graphics engine really isn't good enough.
Yeah,
but you can kind of ignore it. Like, you can kind of ignore it because you'll get so invested into the storyline.
You can, but I look at it and I think, well, this is BioWare. Could they not have like recycled a Mass Effect engine or something? Is that not something they could have done to just make it a bit more? I'm not going to say realistic because I don't like that term. Because I mean, how realistic is a game about swords made of light and essentially magical powers? How realistic is that ever going to be? But it's sort of hard to reconcile the way the game looks with the material it's based off, which is the films. It's like they don't really match. I don't know where they got the art style from. I don't know why they decided to do it that way. It's just something about it that doesn't fit.
I know, but it's Old Republic though, ain't it? It's supposed to be thousands of years before. That's like their excuse, isn't it? You know, for making things look different, but still lightsabers, still stormtroopers sort of, and things like that. So we can kind of link this into going into the future, I suppose. Now, with it being so story driven and such, and you know, I think every NPC I've spoke to has had a different voice. I mean, every NPC, it's just crazy. It's like, I can't remember anybody being identical. They might be done by the same voice actors, but they don't sound the same, and that was quite mind blowing. Now, if you look at the sales figures for Old Republic, it's dropped like a brick. I mean, it was number 1, and now I think it's number 10 in the. I think it was that the UK sales charts, maybe European, I don't know, but it is dropping like a brick, which is quite a bad sign. You would have expected it to stay higher for longer. Now, on like an investment level, if you're an investor and you want to invest into EA and into BioWare, you want to invest into things which are going to, you know, obviously produce money. But when you look at the figures, I think, and obviously look at populations, you've got a massive initial spike on Old Republic. I think, did it go up to 4 million or nearly 5 million?
I think it was
let's just say around about, I think it was around about 4 million or something it got up to. And it's going to sit at that level and then it's going to drop off. You know, it's never going to get another 4 million subscribers unless something really major happens, right? So that's kind of like its ceiling. Why would you invest in something which is now decreasing in sales? Now, the whole reason I'm making this point is because you play the game from level 1 to 50, you've experienced a really good storyline. First expansion pack comes out for Old Republic. Will that be as good as the original? Well, based off the figures I'm seeing, probably not, because there's not going to be that investment there. BioWare and EA are going to start directing talent to other areas. You know, they don't just make Old Republic, do they? They make Mass Effect, they make all kinds of games, which are like really big sellers. So to me, I honestly believe the content of the game will only really get worse over time unless the population does, let's say it drops to like 3 million but stays there solidly, then yeah, okay, maybe there would be a point for it. But if it drops like a brick, then you've got a problem. And another point I want to make before you start ranting, son, is most people who have come to the Old Republic have played World of Warcraft. It's because they want something new, you know, and they come to the Old Republic and they see a game which is very similar, but just with a Star Wars theme. But then they see things that are missing, which are there in World of Warcraft. You know, so you've got things like the complete craft system. I believe there's problems at the moment with the Old Republic one. You know, with items not being there or you can't make items. You've got server login times because there's not enough capacity on certain servers. You've got massive delays in GMs actually responding to stuff. You know, you don't really get that in World of Warcraft. Now, I know this is at launch, but really, how many MMOs have launched over the past years, well, the past couple of years, that have suffered from exactly the same thing? You would think a company like BioWare or EA would actually have thought, okay, we need to overstaff to make sure that we've got enough people on board to, you know, deal with these customer relations problems. But then you've also got things like there is an ability lag in the game, which is being sorted, but it's obviously quite bad. You know, you press an ability, it doesn't go off, then it starts casting. Yet World of Warcraft, what ability lag does that have? Absolutely not. You know, so you get these people who've come from a highly polished game into a game which I would say is very polished, but lacks these little crucial bits which they can get if they just go back to World of Warcraft. And to me, it's like there's a for any game to, I mean, if it's trying to get subscribers off World of Warcraft, it needs to be just as polished or better on launch, which is it's probably impossible. Because, I mean, Warcraft's been around for 7 years. It's like, it's had 7 years of development gone into it, 7 years of, you know, work. It's impossible to get that kind of level come launch of an MMO. But sometimes I kind of think to myself, if Old Republic had just waited maybe 6 months more, 7 or 8 months more before it launched, it might have actually been a much better game. You know, like with these like little finicky problems.
I think they should have waited. I mean, I'm enjoying it, I have to say.
I guess the problem why they haven't waited as well is things like Guild Wars 2 and stuff like that, which they know is coming out, and you know, like Diablo 3 and stuff like that. They're going to eat into any kind of profit they would make if they released later on into this year.
I think Guild Wars 2 is possibly one of the scarier things that's coming out, just because of the amount of marketing and publicity and information that's been given out on that game. I mean, in comparison to Guild Wars, I mean, Guild Wars 2 is like a marketing giant at the moment. They've pushed a lot into it, and there's also the added benefit of they've made it very clear that you don't pay monthly subscription. Star Wars is, as you say, probably the last MMO that's going to have a monthly sub. If someone turns up and says on the Star Wars forum, you know, I've been playing Guild Wars 2 when it came out, and it's got everything that this game has got, and it only costs once. What's going to happen? People will flood from it because there are.
But I think you have problems with that anyway, because Star Wars is like, I know it's fantasy, but it's like sci-fi fantasy, and you really need to enjoy Star Wars to enjoy that. Guild Wars is just generic fantasy, so
yeah,
a lot of people are more attracted to being a wizard or whatever than instead of being a bloody bounty hunter or whatever. So it's like that's kind of a little bit of a problem. It's always going to have.
It's easy to get into fantasy. Basically, there's not as much. I think it comes down to the explanation for fantasy is magic. That's all you need to say, isn't it? If someone does something unbelievable, magic. It's fantasy. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Sci-fi is never that simple, and although Star Wars is really quite soft sci-fi, there's still bits that people will not quite get if they don't like Star Wars in the first place. And the name has a lot of pull, but liking Star Wars and being a gamer are two separate things that just happen to have come together for this. Just because you like Star Wars does not mean you'll accept the fact that there are things that just don't work properly, even if it's only small bugs, things like ability lag. It's not, in the grand scheme of things, a huge problem, but it's irritating. You know, why not put up with it? It's like overload on the Sith Inquisitor. When I press, it's bound to 5 on my keyboard. I press 5, which means my character should leap into the air, then land on the floor, and use the Force to make a massive shockwave. That doesn't happen. I press 5, and about 2 seconds later, he does it. It's
same with Force Lightning. Yeah, what I often end up doing with Force Lightning, because it's channeled, I'll press 3 because that's what it's bound to. He won't cast it, but then I'll press it again. But in that time for me pressing it again, he started to cast it, and because I pressed it again, it's cancelled it. So he's only really channeled a second of what is like a 4-second channeled ability, or 3 seconds, or whatever it is. So that's irritating as hell, that is. But you know, these things will get fixed. But I think the biggest question is literally this: is Star Wars: The Old Republic an MMO?
It doesn't feel like it, does it? It just doesn't.
Because I tell you what, it feels like to me. It feels like I'm just playing Mass Effect with you, co-op.
Yeah.
And there happens to be other people running around.
If Mass Effect 2 had the co-op that Star Wars has, I know that sounds weird because it's an MMO, but that's what it is for us.
Yeah.
It's a co-op game. I'd have probably sunk a million hours into that. I mean, hell, if Mass Effect 3 had co-op the way that Star Wars has got it, then that'd be me sold.
Because we would literally play Old Republic to max level just for the story and just for the co-op nature of the game. Because we sit there and we piss ourselves laughing when people, you know, when like negative responses are made, people are killed in conversations and all kinds of stuff like that. It's really funny, and it's like, oh, and then it's like the little bit of the only real MMO part of it is the fact the combat system's ripped from an MMO. That's literally it.
Yeah, everything else, it does have, every time I play it, I just sit there and I think, this feels familiar. It shouldn't do, but it does. And it's like, it sort of, it worries me because you can't base an entire game off it feeling like another game.
MMOs need to have a lot of community interaction between each other to function. If you have got a personal storyline which you are completing to level 50, that's fantastic. You are now level 50. What the hell are you going to do? Just do, you know, you reach a point where your story has finished. And if they release content, you know, let's say if they released a major operation every month, let's say, they probably won't because that's too often, right? You can't go a month on some stupid storyline where you're waiting for something to happen and then it suddenly happens and there's the raid and it's like, oh, what? Because you're so used to this very intensive story-driven atmosphere, which is all of a sudden taken away at level 50. Because that's when most people are going to realise, hey up, I'm just playing World of Warcraft here. And then they'll go, hey up, I've been playing World of Warcraft for 5 years. I'm going back to World of Warcraft. That's what's going to happen, I think, to this game. It's just going to collapse when everybody gets to level 50. And it'll carry on. People will then start realising what's going on, that there's not really much story left, and that is where a big problem's going to come in. Now, you could say, well, you can go and start another character. You could. And arguably, there are 8 storylines in the game that you could follow, because I believe when you pick your advanced class, you're still following the same storyline. There may be little subtle changes, but you're still following the same storyline, basically. And you know, it's not really that much different. You're still going to the same areas. It's like what often tends to happen is on the map will be like it'll be symmetrical, like a mirror of itself. And on one side will be the Sith Inquisitor room, and on the other side will be the Sith Warrior room. And I guess that's how it goes for all the advanced classes, like the Bounty Hunter. You have the Power Tech, then you have the Mercenary, and whatever, like on the map. So yeah, you could argue you could play through it, and there is a load of. I mean, there has literally got to be hundreds of hours of content if you were to play every class to level 50, right? Some bits might be samey. You're going to be in the same area, but you're going to have a very different storyline, which is the main pulling factor of the whole game. Yeah, it's Star Wars, but it doesn't really feel like Star Wars because it's like an earlier version of Star Wars. It's nothing like the films, you know, so lore-wise, they just go crazy. You know, anything can happen. It's pretty mental like that. I guess this brings me on to my last question, bloke. Would you recommend me this game, or recommend anybody this game? And if you would, why would you do that?
See, I've already recommended it to someone who I know is a fan of MMOs. She's played Lord of the Rings online since it came out, and she's a big fan of PvP, and she quite likes Star Wars. And so I said, well, you know, I've got it. I'll give it a play. I'll tell you what I think. I've already recommended it because I think for the amount of content you get, even if you just want to look at it from a cold sort of money versus time standpoint, it is good value for money. Even if you only played it by yourself, it's good value for money because there's so much to do, and there's so much in the way of story, and the way the stories are told is good. In fact, I'd say that the game itself is good, but I couldn't recommend it to someone as an MMO at all because
this is the problem. This is the problem. It's like I would recommend the game to people because you are going to get a lot of content out of the game itself. But it is not an MMO. It is an MMO, but it doesn't really feel like an MMO to me because it's gone a very different way of doing it, making it a very personal MMO experience, which is like, it's an oxymoron, isn't it? How can it be personal, but massively multiplayer?
Yeah. And
it can't be.
The thing that makes it difficult is even when you are involved with other people, when we did Hammer Station with 2 random guys, we just said into general, you know, someone else is looking to do this, do you want to join us?
Yeah.
Even that, I mean, there wasn't a lot of story in Hammer Station, but it still didn't really feel like an MMO because there's such little contact in between. You know, you might be...
I think as well, with feeling like an MMO, is there the population's spread all over the place. It's like, you can go into the Imperial Fleet and there might only be 120 people there, and you think, well, hang on, this is the main place, there's not many people here. But then you can go to Drawman Cass, and there might be 150 people there. Then you could go to Hoth, there might be 200 people there. It's like very spread out. Like, and then this doesn't account for people on their ships. Hundreds and thousands, you know, thousands of people are going to be, because it's all your own instance, and it's like, I think it's too heavily instanced, and I think it's too heavily dependent on its story-driven narrative to really be a successful long-term MMO. Having said that, though, I do believe it's quite a good game, and I can fully see me and you playing it through to level 50 and having a real good time doing it. You know, because, I mean, for God's sake, we've been having a right blast playing the game, but really, all we're playing is a cooperative RPG. That is all we're playing. We're not playing an MMO.
It's one of the few games I've played where, on the one hand, the amount going on and the amount of interaction you have from a co-op standpoint is mixed together with isolation. Because when we go and do quests and stuff, it's a good game and it's fun and we enjoy it. But then I go to the Imperial Fleet and it goes from being 2 of us to still being 2 of us because there's no one around. And it's like, it feels like you've been given this massive galaxy, you've got all these planets, you've got all these quests. You see people running around and doing quests, but then you go to what feels like the hub, the main place, the area where everyone is, and you see 8 people stood round the mission box, and that's it. And it's like, where are the people, basically? In an MMO, where are the people? Why am I not seeing them? Why aren't they?
I think it's a critical design flaw. It's a critical design flaw. MMOs need hubs for people to be in because you need to feel like you're part of a world. And the way you feel like you're part of a world is if there are actually other people moving around. Now, you go to Orgrimmar, you go to Stormwind, you go to Undersea. Maybe not Undersea as much, but they're hubs of activity. Everybody is there. You know, you go to Dalaran when that was relevant. Everybody was there. You go to the Imperial Fleet, and well, it doesn't feel like there's loads of people there, and the game does have a high population at the moment, but it's not very good at showing off its population. I mean, when we connect to our server, which I cannot pronounce, but when we connect to it, it's heavy load. It's like heavy. This server's packed, you know, but
there's no one on it. That's the thing. It's like you look at the heavy load thing, and you think, oh god, I might have a queue. You log in. You're in the Imperial Fleet, you wander around, there's only 20 other people there, and you think...
You get on your ship to go somewhere. You're on your little ship with your droid and Kenval.
Where are these thousands of people?
Fucking droid was to shut his mouth as well. Jeez, he does.
I hate the droid.
Hello, master. but look, there you go. I think it's a very, very difficult game to recommend on its MMO strengths because they are. I simply think World of Warcraft's MMO strengths are better. But its story-driven RPG element is mind-blowingly good, and that alone makes it worth the purchase price. An issue you could have is, I think, like I said before, what's going to probably happen. And this is what deep down, this is what I feel will probably happen. Is you'll end up with this game is like a stopgap between Guild Wars 2, but also between Guild Wars 2's release. At least in my mind, it kind of is. But it's also, why would you pay a monthly subscription to a game which is story-driven when you have completed the story?
Yeah.
It's like, I wouldn't. And so maybe I've bought the game, I might play or pay the subscription fee for 3 months, and then I'm going to stop. And I think that's probably going to be a wide-scale problem the game's going to have. And I would say, if you are seriously looking at this as like a future MMO, something to invest years into, it's probably not the game for that.
No, I totally agree. I think that's the biggest concern, really. It's, as a co-op RPG, it's absolutely fantastic. As an MMO, I don't think people are going to play it. I think people will get to level 50. They might get to level 50 a couple of times, to see like the opposite storyline. Say you've done like a Sith warrior, and you think, well, hang on, what happens with the Jedi? How different is it? And you might do that. Some people might play through to level 50 a couple of times, but I think once you get to level 50, the complete lack of everything that got you there, there's going to be no story. There's going to be nothing to push you on. There's going to be no sort of progress for your character in the same way there has been all the way through the game. Because at the moment, you're not hunting for loot. You're not really hunting for levels. You're hunting for the next part of the story.
Yeah.
And when you get to level 50, and you've done the story, and you've got the loot, what have you got? You've got a multiplayer game with no other players, because you hardly spoke to anyone getting there. You might do the occasional raid, but what else is there to do? The PvP is not good enough. I will just say that right now. The PvP
well, it might be at level 50. Enough. It might be at level 50 though, this is the thing.
But if you get dumped in with a load of level 19s, what's the point? Where's the challenge? You've just been dumped in basically a ground. It's just shooting fish in a barrel. You can just go around killing anyone you like because you're 50, you've got the gear. In comes poor Captain level 14 with this complete lack of movement and no abilities, and you slam him over and over again. It's a massive problem, and they either need to address it or be prepared to have a lot of people join and then leave in really only a couple of months.
Well, let's wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed that, people. This was the first episode of Game Show. Now, it obviously didn't feature any community questions, and it was very in-depth. This was quite a long game show because, covering an MMO is a big thing. It's not something we can do. Like, say if we were going to cover, I don't know, Serious Sam 3, let's say that was the topic for a game show, it would obviously be a lot faster. It wouldn't be, a massive in-depth discussion. But, it's an MMO, Star Wars The Old Republic is. It's been in development for years. We feel it deserves this amount of attention. It literally does. That's, and I think we've covered it in as much detail as we could. So yeah, I mean, we'll start getting some viewer questions in. We'll get an email address sorted out and whatnot, son, and it'll be Christmas.
It'll be absolutely pure.
You know it. So we'll catch you next time, people. We've been Stylosa and Kirioth. Toodaloo.